Daf Yomi, Tractate Zevachim, page 107a, top of the page, with the words Rava Amar. Rava Amar, Kid Rabbi Yonah, Ziyam Rabbi Yonah, Az Yasham Sham, Mala lo ana shela im ken hizir, Afka lo ana shela im ken hizir. Rava said the prohibition can be derived in accordance with the statement of Rabbi Yonah. As Rabbi Yonah says, it is derived from the verse, but in the place that the Lord will choose in one of your tribes, there you shall offer up your burnt offerings, and you shall do all that I command you. Deuteronomy 12:14. Through the juxtaposition of the word there, sham, in the first part of the verse, to the word there in the second part of the verse, this serves to juxtapose the offering up mentioned in the first part to the sacrifice of an offering mentioned in the second part, which includes slaughtering it. Accordingly, it teaches that just as there with regard to offering up the Torah did not prescribe punishment unless it also prohibited it, so too here with regard to slaughtering the Torah did not prescribe punishment unless it also prohibited it. Therefore, even though the Torah does not explicitly state the prohibition, it is evident that it is prohibited. The Gemara 106a states that the source for liability for offering up outside the temple is the verse, any man that offers up a burnt offering or sacrifice, and he will not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting to sacrifice it to the Lord, and that man shall be cut off from his people. Leviticus 17:8-9. The Gemara asks, we have found that one is liable only for offerings that are fit to be burned inside the temple courtyard, having been appropriately slaughtered inside the temple courtyard, which one then offered up outside the courtyard. The verse states, he will not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting, which indicates that they were fit to be brought to the temple. From where is it derived that one is also liable with regard to offerings that are unfit and are to be burned outside the temple, as they were unlawfully slaughtered outside the temple courtyard, that one then offered outside? Amar Rav Kahana, Amar Kra, Rav Kahana said, the beginning of that verse states, and to them, to them you shall say, Leviticus 17:8. The term alehem, to them, written with the letter aleph, is phonetically similar to the term alehem, about them, written with the letter ayin. Therefore, the verse can be understood as saying, about that which is written in the adjacent passage, you shall say. The preceding passage discusses offerings that were slaughtered outside the temple, so the liability for offering up outside the temple mentioned in this verse is also referring to those offerings. Maskif lavo, mi kisiv v'aleihem v'aleihem kisiv. Ela kedetane divrei v'ishmael v'aleihem tomar le'arev parashios. Rava objects to this, is written about them and not to them. So someone wants to make a comparison, and the other person doesn't say this can be compared. Basically, can you compare an ayin to an aleph? Depends who you ask. Some people say yes, some people say no. That's what's happening here. Rava says, no, you can't compare them. It's alehem, it's an ayin, is different than with an aleph. It's written, and it means that the command should be relayed to Aaron, his sons, the Jewish people, who are mentioned in the beginning of the passage. Rather, liability in this case is derived as the school Rabbi Ishmael taught. The opening phrase, and to them you shall say, starts with the conjunction and, to mix the passages of slaughtering outside the temple and offering up outside the temple, slaughtering outside the temple and offering up outside the temple, in order to teach that one is liable for the latter even after having done the former. Rabbi Yochanan Manas Yahava Rabbi Yochanan said, liability in this case is derived through a verbal analogy between the reference to bringing stated with regard to slaughtering, see Leviticus 17:4, and the reference to bringing stated with regard to offering up, see Leviticus 17 verse 9. The verbal analogy teaches that just as there with regard to slaughtering, one is liable for offerings that are going to be burned outside the temple, since one slaughtered them there, so too here with regard to offering up, one is liable even for offerings that are unfit, and so will be burned outside the temple, having been slaughtered there. Maskif Rav Bivi haditnan 36 krisos b'toira telasim v'shav haviyan ika hamala kasha. Rav Bivi objects to these suggestions, but what about that which we learned in the Mishnah, Ritot 2a? There are 36 cases in the Torah for which one is liable to receive karet. The Mishnah enumerates all 36, and offering up outside the temple is counted as only one of them. According to these suggestions, there are 37, as there is one case of one who offers up an offering that was slaughtered inside the temple, and the other case of one who offers up an offering that was slaughtered outside the temple, which are considered two independent prohibitions. The Gemara concedes this is difficult. I wonder why it says kasha instead of teku. It's another one of my questions. My own personal tekus or kashas. V'haditznan azarik miktzas damim bachutz chayav bin alon. Naf kelem d'tanya dam yichashev lerabos azarik. Divrei Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Akiva Omer o zevach lerabos azarik. The Gemara considers a source for other provisions, and concerning that which we learned in the Mishnah 110a, one who sprinkles part of the blood of an offering, for example, if he sprinkles one sprinkling instead of 4 outside the temple courtyard, is liable. From where do we derive this? The Tana derives it from that which is taught in a Braita. The verse states with regard to one who slaughters outside the temple courtyard, blood shall be imputed to that man. He has shed blood, and that man shall be cut off from among his people. Leviticus 17:4. This serves to include liability for one who sprinkles sacrificial blood outside the temple courtyard. This is the statement of Rabbi Ishmael. Rabbi Akiva says, it is derived from the verse, any man that offers up a burnt offering or sacrifice, Leviticus 17:8. The term or serves to include liability for one who sprinkles blood outside the temple courtyard. Rabbi Ishmael, Hai o Zevach, my avidle chalek. The Gemara asks, and as for Rabbi Ishmael, what does he do with the term or in a burnt offering or sacrifice? It serves to divide them into two independent cases, such that liability is incurred even if one offered up only one of them. Rabbi Akiva lechalek benale. The Gemara asks, and as for Rabbi Akiva, from where does he derive the halakha to divide them into two cases? He derives it from the next verse, and he will not bring it to the entrance of the tent of meeting. Leviticus 17:9. The term it is written in the singular to indicate that one is liable even if he offered up only one of them. Rabbi Yishmael, hahu mibaile, ala shalem hu chayav, eno chayav ala chaser. Rabbi Akiva nafkele mila so. And as for Rabbi Yishmael, why does he not derive that the halakha from the term it? The Gemara answers, according to him, that term is necessary as a source for the halakha that one is liable for offering up a complete animal, but one is not liable for offering up an incomplete animal. The term it indicates an animal in its entirety. And as for Rabbi Akiva, he derives this from the repetition of it in the continuation of the verse, he will not bring it to sacrifice it to the Lord. Leviticus 17:9. Rabbi Ishmael. Where are we? What's the place here? Wow. Rabbi Shmuel Chad Muktre Panim Shechasru Beheran Bachutz V'chad Muktre Chutz Shechasru Beheran Bachutz Piotanya Rabbi Shmuel Amel Yachon Muktre Panim Shechasru Beheran Bachutz Chayev Tamaloma La So Ala Shalim Chayav V'ino Chayav Ala Chasel. And as for Rabbi Ishmael, how does he explain the repetition of the word it? He holds that each mention teaches about a different case. One is referring to offerings that are fit to be burned inside the temple courtyard that become incomplete and were then offered up outside. And the other one is referring to offerings that are unfit and so will be burned outside the temple as they were unlawfully slaughtered outside the temple courtyard that became incomplete and were offered up outside. In both cases, one is exempt, and so it is taught in the Braita. Rabbi Ishmael says, one might have thought that with regard to offerings that were fit to be burned inside the temple courtyard, and that became incomplete, and were instead offered up outside, one would be liable. To dispel this notion, the verse states to sacrifice it, which indicates that for offering up a complete animal, one is liable, but one is not liable for an incomplete animal. Take a brief break and be right back after the break. Okay, where were we? We're back from the break. We're holding by Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Akiva, who has already expounded both mentions of the word it, disagrees with Rabbi Ishmael and holds that one is liable for offerings that are fit to be burned inside that became incomplete and were instead offered up outside. Rabbi Akiva haidam yichashev my avid le v'rabois shchitas ha'oiv v'Rabbi Yishmael nafgalem yon asher yishachet. Rabbi Yishmael derives liability for sprinkling part of the blood of an offering outside the temple courtyard from the verse, blood shall be imputed to that man. The Gemara asks, and as for Rabbi Akiva, what does he do with the verse, blood shall be imputed to that man? He expounds it to include liability for the slaughter of a bird offering outside the courtyard. One is liable despite the fact that inside the temple the bird is sacrificed by pinching the nape of its neck, not by slaughtering it. And as for Rabbi Ishmael, he derives this halacha from, or that slaughters it outside the camp. Leviticus 17:3. But Rabbi Akiva amar lach, ahumi boyele al shechet uchayev lo al amoilek. Rabbi Ishmael nafkaleh mi zeh hadavar. And Rabbi Akiva could have said to you that he does not derive it from that verse, as he holds that it is necessary to teach that only one who slaughters a bird offering outside is liable, but one is not liable for pinching its nape outside. And as for Rabbi Ishmael, from where does he derive that one is exempt if he pinches? He derives it from the phrase at the beginning of the passage about the slaughtering outside. This is the matter, Leviticus 17 verse 2, which indicates that one is liable only for slaughtering and not for any other method of killing. Titania sher yishchat eli el shochet behema sher zayt min alan tamuloima o asher yishchat. Rabbi Ishmael's opinion is, as it is taught in the Braita, the verse states, any man of the house of Israel that slaughters an ox or a lamb or a goat in the camp, or that slaughters it outside the camp, Leviticus 17 verse 3. From this verse I have derived liability only for one who slaughters an animal offering outside. From where do we derive that one is liable if he slaughtered a bird offering outside? The verse states, or that slaughter is to include liability for slaughtering a bird. מה שחית דין דרך הכשר בפנים חייב מליקת דרך הכשר בפנים אין דין שאין חייב. The one might have thought that even one who pinches the nape of a bird offering outside would be liable. And there is a logical inference to support this. If, with regard to the slaughter of a bird offering, which is not the valid method of preparation inside the temple, one is nevertheless liable if you did it outside, then with regard to pinching the nape of a bird offering, which is the valid method of preparation inside the temple, is it not logical that one is liable if you did it outside? To counter this, the verse states, this is the matter, Leviticus 17:2, which indicates that one is liable only for slaughtering, not for any other method of killing. And Rabbi Kiva could have said to you that he does not derive it from that verse, as he holds that it is necessary for expounding as part of a verbal analogy with the passage with regard to vows, where it is written, this is the matter that the Lord has commanded. Numbers chapter 30, verse 2. The Gemara considers the source for other prohibitions, and concerning that which we learned in the Mishnah in 112b, one who takes a handful from a meal offering outside the temple courtyard, but does not burn it, and one who collects the blood of an offering in a vessel outside the temple courtyard, but does not sprinkle it on an altar, he is exempt. From where do we derive this? That one is not liable unless he also completes the subsequent sacrificial rites. The Gemara is surprised by the question, but from where would it be derived that one is liable for these acts, necessitating a source for the fact that he is exempt? The Gemara demonstrates that there is no reason to have assumed that one would be liable if you suggest deriving it through a comparison to slaughtering outside the temple, where one is liable even if he does not perform the subsequent sacrificial rites. This can be refuted. What is notable about slaughtering? It is notable in that, with regard to a paschal offering, if one slaughters it with the intent that it be for the sake of those who cannot eat it, it is thereby disqualified. The cases in the Mishnah do not share this stringency. And if you suggest deriving it through a comparison to sprinkling blood outside the temple, as one is liable for sprinkling the blood, even though it is only one of the sacrificial rites of the offering that should have been performed inside the temple, this can be refuted. What is notable about sprinkling? It is notable in that a non-priest who sprinkles blood in the temple is liable to be punished with death at the hand of heaven for this act. The cases in the Mishnah do not share this stringency. And now we turn to 107b, Tesimi Banaya. Given that each suggestion has a different refutation, the Gemara suggests derive it through a comparison to the common element shared by these two cases. Slaughtering and sprinkling are each just one of the sacrificial rites that are performed with an offering, and yet one is liable for performing them outside the temple. Since the derivation is based on a comparison to both cases, the refutations offered for each individual case are no longer relevant. And that is, okay, we'll stop here and continue with the next Amud.